I'm Teri Hart, and today on The Heart of It All, we are turning the tables on caregiving. Award-winning author and journalist Marni Jackson is living with Parkinson's disease and is joining us to talk about being the caregivee. Let's get into it. Caregiving from the side of the care receiver. Hey folks, welcome to this edition of The Heart of It All. I'm Teri Hart. This episode of The Heart of It All is presented by Capital Direct. Planning for the future is a gift to your family. The Capital Direct One Income Trust is a carefully curated portfolio of residential mortgages that can assist in your family's planning. With consistent returns and quarterly distributions, their proven track record has been recognized by the Canadian Hedge Fund Awards for Best 10-Year Return. Visit incometrust1.com to learn more. This is a podcast all about caregiving. And yeah, we are sticking to talking about caregiving. But in this week's episode, we're going to talk to a care receiver. Somebody who's at, a new chapter in their life and is having to ask for more care from their friends and family. Award-winning author Marni Jackson is joining us. She lives with Parkinson's. I've known Marni for a really long time, and I, to be honest, was pretty nervous about doing this interview because talking to her in this formal way about this diagnosis and what it means for her life and what it means around asking for help from people, that's a bit nervous-making with a friend. Here's what I wasn't nervous about: how transparent Marni was going to be. And she, of course, was all that and more. A couple of my favorite parts of the interview. Number one was her explaining to me the relationship between the caregiver and the care receiver and how it's a dance. That's how she referred to it, a dance. I loved how she talked about how, the disease is hard and it's very tough, but it also has forced her to slow down and look at the world in a different way. Marni Jackson is impossible to listen to and not take away nugget after nugget, so you're in for a treat. Let me give you a little bit of a background on Parkinson's disease and just how prevalent it is. Parkinson's is the fastest growing neurological disease in the world. More than 110,000 Canadians have the disorder, and every day, 38 more are diagnosed. Now, Marni Jackson herself is the former Rogers Chair of the Literary Journalism Program at the Banff Centre. She has won numerous awards for her journalism, especially for humor, which comes across very, very clearly in this interview. And she's the author of 1 novel and 3 nonfiction books, including an investigation into the benighted science of pain. She's also busy in the theater world and loves collaboration. Also, a high recommend, and this will be in our show notes, Marni's recent Globe and Mail article featuring her experience with Parkinson's and boxing. We also talk about that in the interview. Sit down and enjoy this very, very transparent conversation of what it means to be on the receiving end of caregiving. Marni Jackson, thanks so much for being here on The Heart of It All.
Thanks, Teri. It's great to talk to you.
So, at 79 years old, you find yourself in a position of needing some care. And this is a chapter in your life that is brand new to you, something you hadn't required before. Fill our listeners in case they don't know, about what change has happened in your life.
Well, about a year ago, I was diagnosed with early Parkinson's, and I went to a neurologist because I had tremor in my right hand, my little finger, actually. And also, my gait, my walking wasn't quite the same. And I had other weird things too, like a diminished sense of smell. Yeah, I mean, the symptoms are weird, but they were kind of subtle at the time. But I went there, and the neurologist watched me walk and kind of pulled me and said, yeah, I would say you're 50-60% sure you've got Parkinson's. The diagnosis is so simple, right? But it's quite life-changing when you know you have Parkinson's. So at that point, I was doing most things, but I had noticed these symptoms. So, my life had begun to change.
I want to touch on something you said there. The diagnosis is so simple, but it's life changing. How is the diagnosis simple in your experience, Marnie?
Well, the weird thing is that there are no blood tests or markers. There's no clear evaluation. It's just a neurologist saying, walk across the room. Oh, you've got a shuffly gait and, your balance is a little off. And so it's almost guesswork, really. But then as the year progressed, it was very clear to me that it was, I had this neurodegenerative disease, progressive, incurable, and many, like up to 40 symptoms. So I slowly began to see that I was in for something here.
So you have the tremor, your gait feels a little off. You take the steps to go to a specialist, which a lot of people avoid.
hmm
Did you go at the right time? Did you get this diagnosis at the right time? Was it something that emotionally you were willing to do?
well, would there ever be a right time for a diagnosis like that? I don't know. The other interesting thing is that once you notice symptoms, that's the tip of the iceberg. You probably had it for years. And looking back, I can think of other symptoms that clearly indicated that it had set in much earlier. But then once your symptoms, join these, they're stiff, you're rigid, your walk is affected, then they know that it is Parkinson's. Was I ready for it? No, of course not. I was not planning on having Parkinson's. And at first, I had to learn a lot about it. I had to research. I kind of treated it as if I was writing an article, which I ended up doing anyway. But I went, okay, Parkinson's, let's just see. I'm going to research the hell out of this. And slowly, I came to accept that I'm still accepting it, that this was me, this was my life. It was going to change whether I wanted it or not. And so I had to wrap my head around that. And honestly, I think I was not only in denial, I was in denial about being in denial. I, no, I'm fine. I'm fine. Parkinson's, nothing really. So I'm still coming to grips with it, really. And also it changes. It progresses. You feel different. My balance is good, but my walking is not great. And so, I don't hike. I don't walk far now. I don't go to the Eaton Center, Terry. Who would anyway?
What is the Eaton Center doing without you, Marn?
So my life has shrunk in circumference, but it has expanded in other ways. Know a lot more about Parkinson's for one thing, which so many people, as you know, 110,000 Canadians live with this, and it is the fastest growing neurological disease in the world.
Wow. What do they attribute that to, Marnie? Can they draw any correlation between the growth of this disease and anything in the world? Any
Yes,
factors?
they do. Well, one is the aging of the population, obviously. It tends to affect older people, although there's young onset Parkinson's too. But it's mostly among the old. And environmental toxins are implicated, like pesticides in particular. And it's not a cause and effect, but they've definitely linked environmental toxins to the onset of Parkinson's.
Of course, we would be remiss in not mentioning arguably the most famous case of a younger person being diagnosed and living with Parkinson's, of course, Michael J. Fox, who's done so much for research.
Absolutely. He's poured millions into it. And I regularly go into his website, the Michael J. Fox Foundation, because it's focused on research and a cure. And honestly, I feel it must be, we've got to be close because the main treatment, the gold standard treatment for Parkinson is levodopa, which replaces the diminished dopamine. And it's been around for 20, 30 years. So there's got to be something beyond that, which I'm taking, by the way. I take it.
You talk about your balance being pretty good, but your walk not being great. I'm wondering if you can look back on your life and think, oh no, I had this then, and have some benchmarks. Are there things that you did in your life, Marnie, that you think are helping you now that you are living with Parkinson's that have been a positive contributing factor to how you're dealing with this neurological disease?
Well, I've always been interested in and writing about the mind-body connection, right? And this is a clear-cut example of brain cells dying, hands responding, The mind-body connection is just so clear in Parkinson's. And I know a lot about that, and I practice my own mind-body connection over the years. Lots of meditation, lots of yoga, lots of patience. I had a concussion, a pretty moderate concussion, which left me with symptoms for a year. And I also, unluckily, had Lyme disease. So both those things forced me to pay really close attention to my health. And also, I learned patience. I learned patience. So I'm real patient.
We're going to do an entire episode on the heart of it all about
Yeah.
patience because I think it is something that isn't discussed and is so necessary, whatever side of the spectrum you are on for the caregiving
And
experience.
the other thing I did was pursue time in nature a lot. We go on a long car trip, and if we stop for gas, I will lie on the meridian. I will lie on the grass. To touch grass means a lot to me. I do try and touch grass whenever I can.
What does that give you, Marnie? That touching grass?
It grounds me. It literally grounds me. It calms me. It makes me feel better. So I live near a park. I spend a lot of time in the park. It has lovely big old trees, and that's where I go.
Parkinson's, as you have said, is unpredictable, progressive, and incurable. Since your diagnosis, how have your needs changed regarding care or help with your family and friends?
Well, I have very good friends who are ready to offer all kinds of support, which makes me feel, good and secure. I can get through my day doing most things, but by 6 o'clock, I'm really toast. I really don't want to be chopping carrots and making dinner. It hurts. I have sciatica, and pain is a big issue with me. 30-40% of Parkinson's people will have pain, and mine is in my back and down my left leg, and it makes standing or walking pretty painful by the end of the day. So that's when Brian kicks in and grocery shops, makes dinner. And so that's the first thing. But I can get up and make the bed and get dressed and all that. I'm just slow. Like, you don't want to be behind me when I'm getting out of an Uber in the street. You really don't. I'm that woman or man in the checkout line getting my card out very slowly. So slowness. I am slow, which I don't like.
I mean, it requires you to be patient with yourself as well as patience from others, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So if you're in a crowd or you're in a lineup, there's an extra stress there because I don't want to be holding people up, or, I want to be agile. I want to be supple and nimble. So
Mhm.
that's a toughie. That's a tough.
You mentioned Brian, who's your husband, Brian Johnson, and how he has, you are a little bit more dependent on him, and that is a hard thing to face. And I really think that this is so helpful to people who are in the caregiving role to understand what it means to be more dependent when independence has been such a cornerstone of your life. So can you dig a bit deeper for me on that, Marnie, in terms of that feeling or that reticence to ask for help?
Sure. It's humbling. It's humbling. And also our relationship, in the marriage, we're quite autonomous. We've always been very independent and autonomous, and that's our style. And so now for me to say, "Oh, by the way, can you please drive me to this doctor appointment?" And of course he will, and he says yes, but that's new and requires adjustment and patience on his part. It's duller, it's more boring, to be the caregiver. So the way I look at it is caregiving is a two-way street, right? You're not just passively accepting care, you're entering into a dance, a dialogue. Accepting care and giving care are equal things. So your relationship, the caregiving becomes part of the relationship, which I'm sure you understand. And you have to make that kind of fun or lighthearted or dark humor, jokes, so that the caregiving, like the driving up to the North York Hospital becomes, a discussion, or you talk about, the caregiving part has to feel hopeful and interesting and part of the relationship. So when you're receiving care, you give it back by, being light about it or interesting or attentive to the caregiver. How's your day? Not just about taking care of me.
I love that you suggest, I'm sure you know that. Because honestly, Marnie, I don't think people do know that. I think people do think of it as kind of,
A passive thing. Mhm.
yeah, I think that that is a really huge piece of information.
Well, I'm trying to look at it that way to turn those moments into something more interesting, something more alive, you have to be honest with yourself about what you do need and what you don't need. Like I can put my socks on, but that may not happen forever. Did you put my socks on?
I'd come and help you put your socks on any
Thanks,
day.
Teri.
Any day. When you say what you do need and what you don't need, I'm curious, are you consistently adjudicating yourself in terms of, can I do this? Can I not do this? Am I having a good day or a bad day?
A lot, a lot. I mean, some days I take my cane, other days I don't. I mean, also I have good days and bad days, right? And on good days, I'm pretty good for everything. I'm hauling out the recycling, and I have good days. I think a lot of people with Parkinson's understand that. It's up and down a lot. It's really unpredictable. But, I'm thinking down the line, like, for instance, Brian's gonna probably be away on work in the next 6 months. He's gonna travel, and I won't. I won't be going with him. So I have to think ahead about what kind of care do I want that is really helpful and not just an intrusion in my day? Like I like my independence. I like my solitude. I don't really want to accommodate, a stranger who's here to make my dinner or something. That's a huge accommodation. And I'm not sure it will be, I don't know whether it will be necessary, but it makes me think hard about the big change.
So, what are some of the options in your mind when you think about, for lack of a better term, Marnie, the B team?
I think it probably looks like the friends who have already offered that they come to my house with dinner and clean up afterwards. That's all I need for now or for then. I can make my bed. I can tidy up the kitchen. Maybe I won't mop the floor. Maybe I won't vacuum. Bigger cleaning things, you're welcome to it. That's a good idea. Um, yeah, that's caregiving is good. It can clean my house. Um,
I love it.
and who knows what I'll be like in 6 months. Anyway, I've been pretty good. I've gotten a little worse in a year, but not a lot. So things aren't progressing rapidly. Sometimes they can. With young onset Parkinson's, you can have rapid access of symptoms. So
You talk about that, B team, and even with Brian a little bit about, what you need and what you can ask for. I'm wondering from your point of view, is there a right way and a wrong way to offer help?
yes, I think there is. You don't want to be the one who has to think up something for them to do. In other words, what can I do? Is too generic. What can I do? Let me know. Well, I don't want to. You figure it out. And so if people say, I'm free on Tuesday, if you would like me to bring a dinner, what kind of dinner would you like? Or if somebody says, I hear you don't like shopping alone. Let's go shopping on Sunday afternoon. I'll hold you up in the thrift store, because I'm kind of missing shopping. Not that I ever was a big shopper, but browsing. I can't really go to a store and browse. It's too painful. But I don't know. If somebody went with me and distracted me, maybe I could do it.
I think shopping is a wonderful thing to miss. That totally makes sense to me because it's like it's an activity that doesn't really matter.
It's freedom, and you're going to buy something. You have agency. Like you're going to make a choice. You're going to feel good about it. Hopefully, I don't know. It's really weird. I've been thinking about shopping. So yeah, so a friend could say that, or they might say, "Do you feel housebound? Shall I drive you down to the lake? Let's go drive down to the lake, and I'll go to a place where you can walk and make it." So bringing some ideas to the table is really helpful. And often, you get stuck in the house and you don't really know what would be nice, but they have an idea. Like, how about if I bring, you know, um, creme brulee? Great.
How good are you at asking for help? Are you flexing that muscle? Are you building that muscle up in yourself, Marni?
I'm trying. It's not easy. It's not easy. I like my solitude, right? So it's social to be helped. There's social energy involved in somebody helping me. And do I want to expend that,
I find that so interesting. There's social energy to expand. And do you want to spend that social energy because you feel responsible to the person who's offering help?
Yeah, well, you want it to be pleasant for both of you. I just find, Parkinson's makes you kind of idle like a car all day long. Like you're using a lot of energy just to get through the day because you're shaking or you're trembling or, the motor's on all day. So if you go out and have dinner with 6 people, like you're revving at a very high level in order to be present and to not shake too much. And it's like excitement. Good stress is hard for Parkinson's. Bad stress is too. But like good stress, the excitement of a dinner party or something, it's great. It's worth it often, but I'm going to be recovering for 2 days. And it's because of the social energy and flow and everything. So, we have noisy friends too.
You just get invited to too many dinner parties.
No,
That's
I'm
the
not gonna
problem is.
complain about that, God knows, and I love getting out and seeing my friends, I really do, but I sometimes don't have the energy.
Are there different times of day that are better?
Yes, mornings are pretty great, real dip in the late afternoon, I like the sundown thing when the sun goes in, really big dip in the mood and energy and, and then dinner, up again, and then, 11 PM is my favorite time. 11 to midnight, I'm in bed, I've got a book, all is well, right?
I think what struck so many people in the Globe and Mail article that I mentioned earlier, and that we will have in the notes section of this episode for anybody listening, is that boxing has become an outlet for you, which I gotta tell you, Marni, sounds so counterintuitive to everything that you've said up until this point. So please explain what boxing has done for you living with Parkinson's.
Well, just to answer that question directly, boxing is a mind-body exercise that's very cognitive. There's a lot of mental aspects to boxing because there's different attitudes. So in a boxing session, you feel everything working, your body, your breath, yeah, and your brain, as you try out these different punches and stuff. So it's surprisingly mental. And I came across it because there's a poet, a Canadian poet, Anne Carson. She has Parkinson's. She boxes, and she wrote about it in a journal, which I read. And I went, if this poet can put on the boxing gloves and get out there, I am going to do that. And there is a wonderful program. It's called Rock Steady Boxing. It began in the States. It's available in various Canadian cities, Rock Steady Boxing, and it happened to be offered at a gym in my neighborhood. So I began it a few months ago and immediately found it helpful for mood, for energy, just, but it's social too. When you're boxing, you're engaged. You're trying to hit the other person, you know? And so it's quite intimate, really. So it's very social, very communal. The sessions are fun, and the research in the Parkinson's lit says that intense cardio 3 times a week can arrest or even push back Parkinson's symptoms. So it's not just a choice on my part, it's actually the latest science says, intense exercise will be just as good for your symptoms, if not better, than medication. So I'm not
Wow.
in up to the intense cardio part. I'm trying. I need to push more. But even twice a week makes a huge difference in my mood and maybe a little bicep. Who knows? Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, for sure. I loved in the article how you mentioned when the instructor is teaching you and showing things to you and you're in the ring or punching the bag, that you didn't feel that he was patronizing you. And it particularly struck me, Marnie, because you and I have known each other for a very long time. And I found reading that sentence very sad because I thought, is anybody in the world being patronizing to Marni Jackson? And do you feel that? Do you feel that the world is patronizing?
Well, I can't say I've experienced it, but I've been expecting it because it's the "Oh, dear" thing, like, "Oh, dear, I can help you over here," or, "Dear, what would you like? Where would you like to sit?" That the slight bit of kindness and slight bit of pity that creeps into the way people deal with you when you're old, when you're visibly old. "Oh, dear, let me help you." I mean, it's nice, but it is patronizing. So, what I like about these guys is they treat you just as if you are going to become a boxer. They take the boxing they're boxers. They take it seriously, and they expect you to take it seriously, and they don't treat you like a little old lady, which is great.
I love that. And by the essence of doing it, you are a boxer.
Well, yeah. I mean, you have to pretend anyway. And they get us in the ring. They put the gloves on us, and that's a bit infantilizing, but never mind. And then we get in the real ring, and it's non-contact. We don't actually bloody each other's nose. But we spar with them, and we will be sparring with each other. And it's 90 minutes twice a week, so it's a real workout. It's a real workout.
That's long. I'll tell for everybody listening, I first read the article in the physical paper because we still get the physical paper delivered on Saturdays because we like it and crosswords and Sudoku and stuff. And in preparation to talk to you today, I looked it up online and the images online are actually a video. Like they're moving incredible images.
I haven't seen the online videos. I should check it out. But really boxing, yeah. Wish I had my gloves here. I could show them to you.
I wish you did too. But you look good anyways.
Yeah, and so the program exists in Toronto, up north, northwest Toronto. Ours is full at the moment, but it always fluctuates. People come and go. So it has been life-changing, really it has.
I understand that there's a quite significant Parkinson's dancing community too,
Yeah.
that dancing can have a similar impact in the progress of the
Yeah,
disease.
Parkinson's Canada has a free online dance program that comes out of Regent Park. It's every morning at 11 o'clock, and it's free, and it's great. It's chair exercise, seated exercise, and the National Ballet School on Jarvis also offers free dance once a week at their ballet school on Jarvis, which I'm going to check out. I'm going to check out.
You're gonna have a busier schedule than
Well,
me.
I mean, I've flipped it out. I'm gonna spend more time moving than I used to spend writing. I'm gonna be a mover, more than a writer.
Excellent. You mentioned going on long rides, and if you stop to get gas, you will literally touch grass, and how living near a park and seeing those trees or going down by the lake. I'm wondering if you see the world in any different way.
As I've said, the thing about Parkinson's is it slows you down. So I go at a very slow pace and I notice more. You're just forced to tune into your surroundings because you're slow. And also you have to be careful about not falling and, look at the ground. And you are acutely tuned into your surroundings in a way that you're not when you're rushing around and goal oriented and heading for the store. And, I'm where I'm at all the time. And because also it's part of being mindful in order not to fall, in order not to race around and fall. So, as I say, slowness and patience tunes you into the world in a good way. And you enjoy, like I enjoy the fall has been beautiful. The leaves have been just a grace, and you relish the world around you, and you tune into your body in a way that's quite gratifying too. So yeah, the world looks a bit different.
The Globe and Mail article that I've referenced a few times now really did spread, really did have an impact.
I'm still getting emails from people in Banff and in Switzerland. Like I've heard from people who used to know me, or it's amazing. Just it can, and I'm trying to figure out why, because not all these people have Parkinson's who are connected to the piece. And I think it's that we right now, like our demographic, but from midlife on up, I think we're feeling more mortal, just generally more mortal, because the world is in dire shape. So my piece was really secretly about mortality. And I think people responded because it's good to share our consciousness of mortality without being scared by it. Let's just share a sense of it without running away from it or being scared of it. So I think it brought that closer to people without scaring them off, I hope. I didn't try to be positive, honestly. I don't think being positive really helps. I think being honest really helps.
And it had the signature Marni Jackson hilarity in it.
Well, let's hope so. Let's hope so.
For anybody, it is very, very funny article. There are things in it that literally made me laugh out loud both times that I read it. You know, speaking about people feeling a sense of mortality and being honest about that, what conversations have you had now about caregiving with your family and friends?
Well, my son, when he was first out of college, worked for someone who had Parkinson's, and he saw the whole evolution of someone with Parkinson's. So he knows what I might be in for, right? He's tuned in. And, he wants to discuss with me what would be my choices down the line if A, B, or C happened, or would I want to think about assisted living? Would I want to think about MAID? Would I want to think about, like have all those talks? And so he's good about that. I just try and be open to all those conversations, really. Um, yeah, I'm going to talk about everything. Let's face it.
I think more people should be talking about everything. That's why I'm doing this podcast, because we're not talking about the one thing that so many of us are going to experience.
You're absolutely right, Terry. No, you're on the front lines of this necessary conversation that we're all going to have. So true.
Yeah.
So true.
So knowing that, how do you think we can get better at talking about caregiving and how this is going to affect us all at some point?
Well, it begins with sort of small honesty. In other words, your communication with your friends or your family. begins to be honest about how you're really feeling, not just the brave front. Like parents with adult kids, I've been so used to being parents and we're fine. How are you? And putting them first. But as you get older, you have to express to your children, to your grown children, look, I can't do 3 days a week. I can do two. Or I'm having a bad week. I can't babysit. And it's hard to do that because you don't want to let the family down, you know? So it's being honest about where you're at in the initial stages of, getting old or needing help or something. And so therefore it's not a big break. It's not like you don't sit down and have the giant talk all of a sudden. It comes out of small honesty and small frankness and, letting your kids see where you're at, really, really where you're at.
I love that. I love the idea of actually knowing the people in our lives for their truth for now, not these like preconceived notions of our roles in each
Well,
other's
the
lives.
roles get in the way, and we wanna protect others, but we don't want them to worry about us, and we don't wanna worry about there's a lot of protection in families, and some of it's for obvious reasons, but others of it are barriers. The protection becomes, a barrier to communication.
I think that people can walk away with the idea of small honesty. Those two words together really ring true to me in terms of what we can do slowly but surely, kind of opening the window, not all at
Yeah,
once, if we're able
yeah,
to, not all at once. Some situations require that, but if we can slowly but surely let people who love us
mhm,
into who we are and what's going on, I think that that's going to result in a much more open
and
environment.
letting your kids also have problems and troubles and worries that they can bring to you that don't rock the boat, like becoming accustomed to sharing problems, not just the nice facade, Yeah, and you can do that. You can do that in a way that's light and humorous, and it doesn't have to be heavy. It's sharing who you are.
Well, you have done, incredible at sharing who you are with us today here with me. I know that this was kind of a big ask for me of you and for anybody who doesn't know, Marnie and I have known each other for a really long time. So to have this kind of like weird formal conversation about such a big change in your life is a little bit strange to do with people that you know. But I knew that you could bring something to this topic that nobody else could. And I'm really, really grateful, Marnie.
Thank you, Terry, and for you to choose to do this. I realized I did have a lot to say about it, and I was, as I said in the piece, Parkinson's can be quite invisible, and that's quite isolating. So writing about it was good to share, and talking to you is it just feels good.
Thanks for listening to this episode of The Heart of It All, presented by
.ca.
I am so grateful to Marni Jackson for pulling back that curtain on what it means to be on the receiving end of caregiving. So many nuggets of wisdom in there, that dance between caregiver and care receiver, and that it's not a passive role. I think that's really important for anybody who is caregiving to remember. Thanks so much for listening to The Heart of It All. I'm Teri Hart. This podcast was created, executive produced, and is hosted by me. I also would not be here at all without my friends at 6 of 1 Digital. Jess Carroll and Carrie Hayden are with me week in and week out producing this podcast. We're also asking for your help. If you can rate and give a review and share this podcast wherever you're listening or watching, that is on Apple, Spotify, or YouTube. And of course, if you have ideas for this podcast about caregiving, let us know. Slide into our DMs. We're on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. Thanks so much for listening, and please take care. This week's movie recommendation, the documentary Still, a Michael J. Fox story. This movie is so tenderly told. It won a whole bunch of Emmy Awards, and for very good reason. It not only shows you what it's like to live with Parkinson's disease, but also all the research that Michael J. Fox and his family have done towards research and those living with Parkinson's. I highly recommend it. Please watch Still, a Michael J. Fox story.